I personally believe that who we are, our own beliefs and our own values are shaped very much from our parents in our early years. The world, the universe, your feelings, your emotions, there's always feedback coming into us if we are aware enough to try and listen to what's coming in. It's trying to use everything else we see in life and allowing other people's beliefs and values themselves and then subjecting them into ourselves and creating, in essence, like a false version of you, because you're just living every single day with all these patterns, beliefs and values of other people's. And that creates a huge amount of confusion for people, because you're going to be the most reliable, inspired, happy, focused, committed and dedicated to the thing that you're doing when it's something that you truly love and are inspired by. And I went, holy shit. Do you think that's what I've been doing? There's something about me that has to go and find my identity.
Just quickly before we get into the full show, for any of you who's watched this podcast before, you will know that I am super passionate about this podcast and getting on the most interesting guests to help you get better results with your fat loss, your business, your life, and your coaching skills. But at the moment, 85% of you who watch this channel aren't subscribed to the channel. The bigger the channel gets, the better the guests get, the more high production value the show gets, as well as the clips get. So if you're watching this, please, can you click subscribe, like, comment, improve interaction so YouTube know we are a channel to be reckoned with. And then we can take over, and then I'm coming for you, Joe Rogan. So Mark, I've been super excited for this interview. For one reason, because I've been following your work since probably M10 opened. I think I've got every single one of your early ebooks, from the blueprint to the 8-week physique and everything that, from that. And some of the content you've put out in the last few years has been incredible, and actually looking at some of the stuff that's underpinning people's business stuff. But what I wanted to get you on to talk about today was there's something I think that sums up Mark Coles as a person, and that is a personal and professional standard. In everything you do, you're an authority. And in a world that wants to be authorities but don't know how to do it, I think that's quite interesting. So, when it comes to standards, ambition, personal growth, looking into your backstory, is this something you feel you've learned as a child, or is it something you've developed over your career?
Never ever been asked this. Very interesting. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for having me on.
No problem at all.
I know our time calendars were all over the place a little bit, but I'm very grateful that you've asked me to be here. I go back as a child, and I don't think that my standards, I personally believe that who we are, our own beliefs and our own values are shaped very much from our parents in our early years. And then what I do believe that we do as individuals is, if we are aware enough, is we then start to realize that true fulfillment in our own life is when we take control. So I almost feel like I've been given, in the early days, a remote control to somebody else's TV. And all the channels are just all over the place. I generally don't think I knew who I was till I was 30. That's a shock to a lot of people. So with all the decisions I'm making at the moment and where I'm going, it's no surprise that things are flying since 30. But I truly do believe when I was younger, I had a father to look at on a day-to-day basis that was relentless in everything that he did. That's something I watched every single day. He was up early, and I'm going to tell you that the standards that I had, Dad said that manners maketh man. Look somebody in the eye when you speak to them, and have standards. And my father used to tap his finger. He used to smoke a pipe, so he'd always push the tobacco in with his finger. So it was a very hardened finger. And we always used to laugh as kids, is that, like, when he taps on the table, it was like, I feel like I'm going to break my hand. And what was crazy about my dad is that I've really never looked into this as deeply as you've just asked me to do, but I'm being introspective, because Dan Lawrence, a great friend of mine, I interviewed him on an episode of my podcast recently, and I challenged him to go deeper into his childhood. And sometimes we bury things, not bury anything. I've just got so much going on now, I sometimes don't look that far back. But my father had very high standards, and his standards actually was how you treat people. I wouldn't say my dad's standards were like he wasn't obsessive about clothes and fashion and all, but his standards, my father's standards, were actually in how you treat human beings, and also how he held himself accountable to the things that he said he was going to do. So interesting you've asked me this. I've gone around the houses a little bit, but I watched somebody who was absolutely relentless in his pursuit to create the thing he wanted, not what everybody else wanted, him. You know, he played rugby, he traveled, he worked hard. If it was a long day, it was a long. My old man's work days were very, very long. And I suppose I watched this. And I am going to say right now, in terms of, it really bothers me. It's bothered me up till I've become a lot more in control. I really like people to like me. And I think that's because my dad really, really liked people to like him. And when my dad passed away at the end of lockdown, crikey, like, he was loved by people. My old man just never stopped giving to people. And I think I honestly, for the first probably 25, 30, even up to 44 when he passed away, for me, my age, I just watched him just be lovely. And so giving, so thoughtful. And it's really challenged my thoughts. It's really challenged my beliefs. It's really challenged everything for me. So, yeah, I think my standards, firstly, was my father. And then when I found the fitness industry, when I found personal training, I carried those over. I worked in corporate for quite a while. And so I watched corporate. I tell a lot of personal trainers, by the way, that, you know, in the corporate world, you're taught to have standards. You're taught to get things on time. You're taught to expect more. And we work to targets and figures and data. And that was a big thing to me. You know, I saw a lot of that. And then I'll tell you, the next thing that was a pivotal moment in my life was actually going on a Poliquin course. And then I got introduced to Charles Poliquin, who had very high standards in terms of his health, body, mind, wealth. And so I had a father who had a lot of personality and financial and wealth standards and family standards. And then I had a huge amount of watching Charles Poliquin. So all this kind of my father, Charles, other mentors of mine. And then I just became absolutely, okay, I'm watching my dad's standards. I'm watching Charles's standards. And then I became fascinated with being in London and starting to see higher service standards and watching hotels and travel and trains and planes and just starting to understand, if I was going to have my own business, what do I want it to be? So really, in a roundabout shell, a lot of factors, and me being very aware to how other people operate. And that's another thing that I do. I'm very, very aware of how other people operate.
Was it quite jarring? You mentioned obviously your dad wanting everyone to like him, and that was part of the standards that he held, that he instilled in you of how you treat people. And we'll circle back to that in a second. And then having Charles being the next probably biggest mentor and influence in your life, and Charles didn't care what anybody thought of him. Was it quite tricky for you to piece together, where is the middle ground here? These two people are successful in their own rights, but where do I fit in between these two polar opposites of people?
Well, it's funny you say that, because for a while when I started studying under Charles, I started behaving like Charles in the gym. I started to treat people. I'd be like, you do this, you do that. You should be strong. You should be this. And I started to allow a lot of people's own values. Like, for example, I think we've got an internal kind of radar that is on all the time. I did a lot of work with John Demartini, and the world, the universe, your feelings, your emotions, there's always feedback coming into us if we are aware enough to try and listen to what's coming in. And what was coming into me was just confusion. I was seeing my dad. Should I be a surveyor? Should I be this? And this is crazy, right? And this led to something really prolific in my life when I started becoming a personal trainer. So when I was working for my dad, and I ended up working for my dad, I was like, look, my dad's successful. I didn't do well at university, at college, at school or university. Why don't I just follow my dad's footsteps? And maybe part of me was thinking, it's easy. I couldn't find who I wanted to be at school. I would say I was very, very lost with my identity. And I don't mean that in terms of sexuality or anything. I just mean my identity is in, like, do I know me? And that became very prolific, very aware, because I kept questioning stuff. Then I went on Poliquin's course, and I was like, Do I want to be a strength coach? Like, yeah, I do. Okay, cool. This is what the fitness industry needs. But I should stay in property. I should do this. And what I later realized is the more we say to ourselves that should we, it's trying to use everything else we see in life and allowing other people's beliefs and values themselves and then subjecting them into ourselves and creating, in essence, like a false version of you, because you're just living every single day with all these patterns, beliefs, and values of other people's. And that creates a huge amount of confusion for people because it means they're not them. They are basically they're a plasticine modeled version of lots of different people, yet internally they're just completely lost. And I think I found out that was me, if I'm honest. And what happened was I came into my apartment one day and I just said, I'm not happy working for my dad. And I said to my dad, if I'm ever not happy, I'll leave. And I walked into the office and I said, Dad, I love what you do. There's something about me that has to go and find my identity. And at that time, everybody knew me as A, I worked for my dad, John Coles' son. B, I played rugby, so I was John Coles' son. And in the town I worked in, I was John Coles' son. And Dad was very well known and in his business, in the rugby, and in the local town. And I think, but because of all that, my dad had always been a very independent person, always wanted us to just find our own way. And I said, do you know what? This is telling me that all of these things that no matter how, it's easy being Dad's son, easy working for him, easy doing all this stuff. And then there was a big part of me inside was like, this isn't what I'm destined to be. And I can't tell you, it was a feeling. So then I said, well, where am I the most happiest? And it was being a gym. It was just working out in a t-shirt and shorts. And I was like, I wonder whether you can be successful doing the thing that you love the most. And I was 23 at this time. So I killed off university and said to my dad, I'm going to become a personal trainer because I think that this is where I need to be. And I said, Dad, trust me when I tell you this. And I remember sitting in his office and telling him, as long as I'm happy, I'll be successful. And when I started in the fitness industry, again, I was lost again because I was in the fitness industry. And then I started modeling other people like Charles. I did everything Charles did. I started getting bigger, stronger, leaner, going down the strength and conditioning route. And yet again, this bloody radar came back to me and it went, are you happy? And I was like, yes, in the fitness industry, but no being a strength and conditioning coach. So what is it that you love more than anything? And I was like, this was crazy, right? I had a top box from school. Inside it, when I was like 16, all I used to read was the bodybuilding magazines. At home, I built like a pulley rig in the garage. And I looked on the wall, Dexter Jackson was there. And I'd never learned anything about personal development. And I went, I just love bodybuilding, lifting weights. And then I just started trying to learn more about fat loss, body composition, body transformations. And funnily enough, about 4 years after this, I came across John Demartini. And John Demartini said, you're going to be the most reliable, inspired, happy, focused, committed, and dedicated to the thing that you're doing when it's something that you truly love and are inspired by. And I went, holy shit. Do you think that's what I've been doing? And the answer was yes. And I think all I've been doing is listening every single time to something that's telling me I'm happy and then learning that I'm trying to pull I call it my true north nowadays. I truly do believe we've got a true north. There's a direction that we're going in life. And if we're aware and smart enough with ourselves and ask the right questions, we'll keep working towards that thing. And when we veer off it, we end up with all these comparison issues and get lost. And every time we get lost, it's a feedback to you to try and pull yourself back to center. And I think every time I've been lost like everybody else. I've had comparison like everybody else. I've had self-doubt numerous times and we'll always expect to have more of it. All these things everyone's had, low self-confidence, all this stuff. But all the time, Simon, it's just been bringing me back to saying, come on, there's a message here.
Yeah. Do you think your true north veers to the left or the right as you develop and as your priorities change? Because obviously you've gone from being the bodybuilder running a gym to working in Dubai, helping mentor personal trainers. It's still the same realm, but it's shifted. Yeah.
So my own coach, and I still have a coach, not all the time in terms of personal development, but I like them for... only recently I had a call and I said, I just feel my north off a little bit. And then I basically have a couple of hours. It brings me back to an alignment. So what basically has happened throughout my life, and I owe a huge amount of my personal development work to John Demartini. But what I feel happens is that as we go through life, the things that we value just start to change. So while I was in my early bodybuilding days, I couldn't be bothered with like how much wealth I could make. It was can I earn enough money to do the things I want to do, not obsessive amounts more than that, so I can travel, so I can learn, so I can train, so I can do everything. Yes. And I was having, literally wild meats, organic meats. I was having the best proteins. I was traveling. I was buying myself clothes, and everything went on looking after me. I remember having huge amounts of Laverstoke buffalo coming in. Like I was looking after myself while I had a lovely apartment. So I had all the great things that facilitated me doing the things I want to do. And that's all I wanted to do, bodybuild. And also the greatest void in my life was knowledge. And all I did with my money was spend more money to acquire more knowledge. And I felt that I had a lot of time that I'd wasted at school that I wanted to catch up on. But then this really weird thing happened. I met my wife when I was 38. And I would tell you, if I'm honest, all the way through my bodybuilding, there was a part of me that said, bodybuilding is amazing, absolutely love it. It was a series of questions that people had asked me, which was, why are you not teaching the thing that you know? And that suddenly led me down the teaching route. And my values started to shift a little bit because I started to really enjoy teaching. But it wasn't until I met my wife and said, I don't think I need to step on a stage anymore. And suddenly the responsibility of providing for me and her changed. And then I actually stopped and went, I'm 45 now. So probably the last 6 years, I was always making very good money. But then suddenly I met my wife and I went, okay, like it's now time to put a supercharge on the reputation that you've built and build your wealth alongside it, but also build something way bigger than me. And so what had happened is my values started to shift. And interestingly, my personal development coach asked me the same question. Why are you no longer coaching coaches, like trainers, like on the gym floor and getting fat loss results, etc.? And I said, well, I'm still coaching. And she said, yes, you're coaching, but when you're educating to a lot more people, I'm basically scaling my influence. And she said, the smartest thing you can do when you've gained some skills, knowledge, experience is then scale your influence and train more people. So my values, to answer this question, Simon, my values just keep shifting. And people say to me right now, how's Dubai? Is that forever home? And I went, I don't know. Whichever way the wind blows.
I think you go through periods in your life where these things change, right? I remember when I first joined GP in the city, like my life was in that basement. Right? Yeah. I used to commute from Wolverhampton 2.5 hours each way down to London, do 7 or 8 sessions, come back 7 days a week. And then I had the opportunity to move to Hong Kong, and I was like, I needed that break from London. Yeah, I've moved here, and now I'm kind of getting to the point now where in my early 30s, I've taken a passion for mentoring, I've taken a passion for podcasting. I'm like, I want to know what's next. I want to know, can I leverage some of my time back so I can work on some of the things that maybe is more closer to where my north now sits? I'm about to get married next year. The priorities have changed there. And I think moving back to the UK or moving somewhere where I can have that fresh start just allows me to almost cut away the safety net, burn the bridge, and just go, right, let's go. And there's something that I think is super powerful.
Well, here's the thing, realigning the North Star to me is having conversations with your partner, wife, husband, girlfriend, whatever. And my wife and I came out here. We were genuinely very happy in London. I can't wait to go back for Christmas this year, and I love the city. I love everything that the country, England, has supported me with. But I said to my wife when we came out here last time, and I was like, let's invest in a flat as an investment. And it felt, it didn't happen. And on the flight back, I just was like, and we have these really big, my wife and I have a gin and tonic every Friday night, and we sit and we talk, and it's not for the alcohol, it's for the habit, it's the routine. Yeah. As much as gin and tonic is lovely. But we sit there and we take to ourselves, are we happy? Is there something different we want to do? Is there somewhere different we want to be? Have you had a good week? Are there things that we've not discussed? It's just a great opportunity to connect.
Like that.
And it is that. It's every Friday night. And I'll be honest with you, right? Like, no matter how busy I am, I really, like tonight we're going to an Italian. We'll sit there, we'll have a gin and tonic. And our Friday nights are really important, really important, because it's massive connection and talk. But we asked ourselves, and then this going back to this North Star, Simon, is I truly believe that People live on the edge of fulfillment, but not true fulfillment. Right? And the reason I say this is, if money was no object, travel was no object, fear was no object, where would you be and what would you do? To be truly happy, I'd probably be living in a different county. That means you're not truly fulfilled. Yeah. If you were truly fulfilled, where would you be? Honestly, I've always loved to travel, but, and I go, cool. So it means you're probably about 70%. Yeah. And this is the thing that we ask ourselves, me and my wife. It's like, in London, I'd probably say that I was in a beautiful house, North London, beautiful area, everything around us. But if you say to me, how do I get to 100%? It would be being in the sun more. It would also mean my wife having more. And this isn't about not being selfish. It was my wife and I were going to the gym every day. It was a great bodybuilding gym. And I know that my wife loves the sun. And 4 times a year going on holiday is just not enough. Yeah. And she's truly happy. Where do we want to bring up our child? We're trying for a child now. Like, where do we want to bring up our child? And she was like, do I want to walk through the rain or do I walk through the sun? Now, if it takes you 6 years, engineer that thing. Engineer it. And do you know what's amazing? For the last 2 years, I don't think that I've ever, I mean, I've been driven, Jesus, like really driven. But I don't think I've ever had a fuel inside me as going for this 100%. And to be honest, if I'm really pushing true fulfillment, once I get there, then I'll challenge what's next. And to be honest, the next thing for us would be we're building a house in Dubai. Be ready next year when it's done. The next step will be buying something in Europe, and then we'll be spending part of the year there, part of the year in Dubai. And then after that, there'll be something else. But then in the meantime, there's a child. But do you know what? It's taken me 23 years to build all this stuff. And I truly do believe that if you're constantly questioning, constantly asking yourself, and then constantly doing the work to get to where you want to be, that's life fulfillment, because you're working on yourself, you're working on your purpose, you're working on your mission, you're working on your health, you're working on your finance, you're working on your friends and your relationships with loved ones, and you're working on all of these areas, your knowledge, your skills. And that's where if I do an audit of anybody that comes into our business coaching program, I ask them: health audit, relationships and friends and family audit, your own spiritual purpose of what you're on planet Earth for, audit, your own vocation. What's the career path you have? I asked you, what is your, what do you feel is your education? Where are the gaps in your knowledge? And it's like, then when you do this kind of audit of these things and you go, I'm probably 40% of what I could be. And I'm like, good. So you realize how much more is out there for you. And that for me in our business coaching is, I wish you could bottle it all up and say, personal training coaching, we have a personal development part of our modules in our mentorship. Why? Because I just think that self-exploration and ability to get so much more out of it. Like, look at F1. They are absolutely obsessed with getting the most out of the car. Yeah. They're not happy in just taking it to Sainsbury's. They want to be the elite. And to me, I don't think elitist is the people that have got the most money. Like, I don't see a bodybuilder who's got no money, got no life, not fulfilled in multiple areas of their life, but looks amazing, as being truly fulfilled. And that's where bodybuilding started to I questioned it. Am I truly fulfilled being jacked? And then I met my wife, and then I was like, wow, I've been missing this emotional feeling of love and connection. Massively, Simon. I had the career path, the vocation, the knowledge, and then I got punched in the stomach when I found love. And I was like, see, I deliberately put love on the back burner. Subconsciously told myself, look, don't meet a partner because you won't build a great business, and you certainly won't build a great body. And I think there's a lot of people that get in relationships very, very young and hold on to them, but don't necessarily as a partnership grow together. And that's why I'm not sitting here saying to you, and I haven't really talked about wealth right now, because I think that it's not the fitness industry. I just think that in general, if I'm honest, how I want to portray myself on social media is that it all matters. it all matters. And I think that, we were talking on one of my scale business programs yesterday about what's it like to go from 10K to 20K to 30K to 50K a month. What does it feel like? It was like the same. The same. I remember Tom Billiard, who sold out Quest Nutrition.
Yes, yeah, another guy.
For millions and millions and millions. And they said, how different were you when you sold out and all the money came in the bank? He said, just a load more noughts in the account. I woke up the same dude.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This was the most incredible thing. My wife and I were on Kite Beach in Dubai about 4 weeks ago. We've not long been here. And it's just a normal public beach, nothing fancy. My wife walked past a stall and she saw a rubber ring. And it was just one of them blow up cheap ones, right? And there's a picture of me on my Instagram actually wearing it. And God, it was pence. And my wife's in the sea, she's swinging around in the sea. And I saw a smile on her face and I was like, cost nothing.
Yeah.
But we're here, right? And you could have put us in the most expensive beach club, on the most expensive flight, in the most expensive hotel. But that moment where we had reached something was more gratifying than 100 grand in the bank to a feeling.
Yeah.
Right. And this is so powerful for me because then as I've been going through my life, and I don't expect, I don't expect a 19 to 20-year-old to get it because I think that's what part of life is all about. I think we're supposed to just struggle. And I think we're supposed to work ourselves out and we're a complex being. But I think at 45, even though I want to keep studying, I think I've got a good handle on the fact that true fulfillment isn't one thing.
Yeah.
I
think when I went to an event called the Waking Up Weekend, which is the thing that inspired Tony Robbins to make his event. And it's an event that happens in the US and the UK. And they have this 3-day event. And it's the most professional event that I've ever been on, of course, except the M10 courses, where the chairs were exactly the same millimeters apart. They knew your name when you walked in the door. And what they did is they taught you about the brain, but in between that, they did processes. So let's say they would get someone, you look into the eyes of a stranger, and it built and it built and it built and it built. It looks at your family, it looks at your friends, there's all these parts of it. And just in case you ever end up doing one, I won't tell you how it ends because it builds to something where you might go, not a chance, fuck that, not going to do it. But you realize from that how much there's so much to what is fulfillment. And you actually start to question these areas of your life. And I know, moving to Hong Kong, and I'm sure you're feeling this now, moving out to Dubai, you start to realize these things when you move away from home. You don't have those comforts of family right there. Some of my best moments were a couple of friends, a beer and a beach in an environment where I couldn't see anything. Yeah. There was no distractions and nothing around me. And we distance ourselves from that so often in the rat race and the pursuit, which is good because it allows you the resources to go and do those things, but you can go in too deep if you don't appreciate the other priorities.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I think without wealth and without money, and I think this is a big thing for the fitness industry, is to just the earlier. I was only talking to a property agent, a real estate broker out here this morning, and we were talking about how there's quite a few of the coaches or a good number of the coaches inside my scale program who are making very, very good money, and they have quite a lot that they have at their disposal. And we were talking about investing in property and doing one thing, and it was like, crikey, some of these guys are 23 and they could probably put down 2 or 3 properties a year if they want. And at 23, I was trying to find out who I was and probably spend more time in a club partying and being completely lost in myself. And I think that I have a lot of respect for somebody who's very young, who's trying to find themselves out. I think that the way I tried to find myself out, I went downhill. I ended up doing drugs and drinking every weekend, and I don't regret any of it. I'm very proud of how I came through those times with myself and what I learned. But when I have these young 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds making huge amounts of money so early on and going through the challenges of, it's crazy, I'm making all this money, I just don't feel good. And I'm like, okay, cool. So, what areas of the rest of areas of your life are we going to start looking at, do you want to move? Are you unfulfilled where you live? Do you miss connection and friends and all that stuff? And then we have to really help coach people, because I mean, this is a big thing for me, but I think at 45 and having done so much in my life, multifaceted, I put myself in a really, really credible place as a mentor. And I think that a lot of mentors out there, if I'm honest, haven't even figured themselves yet, but they've made loads of money. So they're teaching funnels, lead magnets, outreach strategies, and one thing another, which all combine part of business. But if you can't help a human being overcome some of the personal challenges that they're going through, or not teach them or handle them, but at least understand that you can't take somebody on a 12-week transformation and get them shredded if they've never stepped in the gym before. Yeah. And I always explain business as the same, no different to muscles in the gym. You can't just batter somebody for 12 weeks and expect them to look insane and then be able to follow that particular diet for the next 24 weeks. You can't expect somebody to go for 12 weeks, hammer all the business tactics, and then come out having made an extra X amount per month and be in a really mentally stable, secure place. Then you're going to leave them. They're going to be lost. They think that they can't take a break. They think they can't take a holiday. They get stressed out. And I have to manage these emotions as people go. And that's why I think for me, when I'm auditing somebody, when I'm working with somebody, Simon, I'm constantly saying, are they okay? Are they happy? I mean, I onboarded somebody this week and I said to them, okay, what's your expectations of me right now on this call? And they were like, that you're going to go through the whole of my business, audit my finances, audit this. And I was like, are you happy with your business right now? And they went, no. I was like, why? I just don't feel in control. I said, cool. Let's just leave the rest of the business. Let's try and understand what control looks like. And they were like, but that's not business. We haven't done any email templates. We haven't done any graphics. We haven't changed my logo. And I was like, but you're not happy.
Yeah.
Why are you not happy? I'm not happy because I just don't feel like this. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's address that now. And if we were able to do that, do you think that we'd be in a great position? They went, absolutely. Yeah. So that's where I come back to it, is that I think that for me, getting to 45 and understanding, which to be fair, my dad's business really took off at 40, 45. So I feel myself in a very privileged position to be in 45 with the business we've got, the life that we've got. I'm pleased that I'm not 65 and then only have a couple 20 years to be around and do this. I feel very, very proud of myself that even though it's taken 23 years, a good 15 of that, by the way, Simon, was trying to figure out who the hell I was.
Yeah. You mentioned that like you didn't really know who you were until around about the age of 30. What was the catalyst for you? What was the thing that made you start to figure it out?
I tell you what it was. It was being challenged. And that's why I think that everybody should have somebody in their corner that challenges them. And I think that you should allow yourself to be challenged, because I needed my values to be challenged. I'm going to be honest and say this. Who was that person? Well, I truly believe my old man, and like I said, he passed away just after lockdown. My old man had very old school values, right? And I the value that what I believe to be true when I got to about 24, even though I did a job as a personal trainer, was self-employed, you are dealt a hand in life, and that's your lot. And I think because my dad wasn't heavily educated in personal development and he made a lot of money, a lot of wealth, knew the investment game, I'd say apart from business and property and being a bloody great guy, I don't think my dad was very well studied in a lot of other different stuff. And I don't mean that anti to him. I just mean that like rugby, who he was, and property was his kind of main thing. And so I started working with a lady called Jane as a personal trainer, and I went around to her house to assess her because she wanted me to train her at home, even though I was working in a gym. And she wasn't very strong. She had, some endocrine challenges, which made it very, very hard for us to lift weights. And we used to really have some great conversations. Then I said to her, look, I need you to train in the gym with more machines because you can't train on body weight. At the time, she was studying under Richard Bandler with NLP. But she'd also, before Richard Bandler, had done a lot of different work. She'd done the Landmark Forum, if you ever heard of that.
Yeah.
And She was very well read, very well studied, very articulate, such a lovely, lovely lady, and played such a huge part in my life. She went on to be a master practitioner and then went heavily studying everything. But just as she was just studying, she just started to say to me one day, "You can have whatever you want in life." And I went, "Absolute rubbish, absolute rubbish. You're dealt a hand." And she went, "Nope, nope, nope." Anyway, we ended up falling out, Simon, briefly, because I thought that all the hocus pocus stuff was just bollocks. And then she gave me the secret. And she said, "I've always promised people that I would always buy them this rather than you buying it for yourself. So here's this book." And honestly, I thought, fuck that, put it down, not going to read it. And one day I lay on my bed and I just thought, give it a go. And I read it from start to finish without putting it down. And in that book, there were so many similarities with me. I then became fascinated and I said to her, "Would you tell me about the Landmark Forum?" And it was a 3-day event exploring that anything is possible in life. And I took myself to London, and I was so naive. I had no idea about personal development. I took myself to London, and I did a 3-day intensive, and it blew my brains. It opened me up. It left me very vulnerable, but I felt like I changed. And then I said, well, if I can change this amount with a little bit of knowledge, what do you think I could do with my life if I changed it with a lot of knowledge? And then I just went on a complete and utter mission to study as much as I could do with personal development, work with a lot of different mentors, changed my life completely. And I think at that point, at 24, I completely re-engineered myself. And it took a 6-year process to re-engineer who I was, from unhappy, uncertain, lacking direction and clarity to I'm in control of every, and I'm going to use this language, I'm in control of every fucking step I make. No one else, no blame, no responsibility. And I basically just took back control. I blamed so many people in my life, Simon, for everything that had not happened to me. School, teachers, parents, blame. You can't blame anybody in life. You can't. So I took back the power, took back the control, and then basically wrote a script for who I was, what I expected of myself, what my standards were, who I wanted to be known for in life, what I wanted to achieve, what milestones met. Then I started writing it all down and vision planning and master planning, and learning from all these different people that that's the way that the greats do shit. And then I just started to do that. And then I suddenly, bit by bit, just started to find me. And I think that that took me on a journey that one day when I was 30, because I told my personal development coach at 24 that I'm not going to meet a wife till I built a body, a business, and a brain. And funnily enough, when I met my wife, I rang her and I said, holy shit, I'm a bit stuck here because I think something's blocking me. She said, do you not remember when you were 24, you told me that you're not going to meet somebody till you built a body, a business, and a brain? And I was like, oh shit, how do you remember that? She said, because I remember everything. She said, would you like to let go of it? At this time, she taught energy medicine.
Great question.
She said, would you like to get rid of it? And I said, why? She went, well, subconscious is basically buried. Until you're ready to let go of it, it's going to control you. And I learned very quickly then that we can reverse our perception and our language. And so I went up to Manchester and I lay on the bed and she did some reversal energy medicine on me. And I drove to Snake Pass, and on the way back through Snake Pass, I cried for half an hour. And I rang her, I said, what's going on? And she said, it's gone.
That's so interesting.
And then I ended up having the most beautiful relationship. But I had to let go of it. I genuinely had to let go.
How does someone go through that process? There'll be people listening to this, heck, myself to some degree included, that are feeling stuck in some aspect of life, whether it's personally or professionally. Like, how does people start this process of creating that vision board, creating that clarity, getting that help?
Well, I'm first and foremost, I would say categorically, you have to be open. Second of all, you have to be prepared to open up Pandora's box and look inside it, right? Because there's a great saying by John DeMartini, and it says, anything that you can't be grateful for in life is baggage. anything that you can be grateful for is fuel for the future. And I was very angry at lots of different things, frustrated at different things, people, places. I'm not going to say right now on here that it's a simple fix. I truly do believe that there are programs and people and readings and learning. But I tell you one thing that you can do. If I ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, what's their knowledge of personal development and human performance? And they said, probably a 1, never studied it. Curious people change lives. I had nothing to do. I had no understanding of exercise, physiology, and mechanics. Went on to teach the fitness industry for years. Yeah. I had no understanding of personal development and mindset. Studied it for years, broke through my own mind and changed thousands of coaches' lives myself. And so I'm going to tell everybody that step number 1 is becoming really curious and wanting to learn it. And starting to actually watch videos. I mean, I went as deep as Joe Dispenza, which is very deep. And looking at energy and communication. But I think the first thing to do, honestly, Simon, is to say, what are you unhappy with, and what would you want your life to look like? Mm-hmm. What do you perceive to be holding you back from achieving more? And this means being honest and going back to things like rape, abuse, bullying, pain, death. They're all things that people would genuinely say is, I mean, I'll be honest with you, when my dad passed away, I got straight in touch with my coach and I said, I need to speak to you. And she was like, why? And I said, my dad's dying. And he was one of my greatest mentors in life. And I said, I don't want to crumble. And so we spent a whole few hours exploring my relationship with loss. And this is an interesting one. We are so conditioned in the world to believe that we should grieve. We are. If you have loss, you should feel pain. But what if you didn't have to feel pain? And so we looked at this and said, I mean, it was a long process to explore it, but your dad dying, and I don't believe, by the way, in therapy to the point where somebody's told how they feel, Simon. Yeah. So if you sit and have therapy, in my opinion, as someone who says, this is how you should feel, this is the way you're going to feel tomorrow, and this is how I want you to think about this, and somebody goes, got it, I'll do my very best. That person's had no influence in change because they've not taken responsibility to look intrinsically, internally themselves. So everything that I ever do, I'm the one that answers the questions. Yeah. So everything that I ever do is about changing my perception. So if you perceive your grandma dying 10 years ago as the worst thing that's ever happened to you, and ever since then things have happened, you basically have a belief that your grand dying was the worst thing that's ever happened to you. In your brain, you've stacked up all the downsides of it, but you've not been brave enough to look at all the benefits of it. So when my dad died, I had to look at all the downsides, and it was not going out for a drink with him anymore, not spending time with him anymore, not having a guidance and mentorship from him anymore, not having Sunday lunches together anymore. And these are all the things that we grieve over, right? And all we do is like when we split up with a girlfriend, the reality is if you split up with a girlfriend or boyfriend, you just both are not compatible. But if you were able to stack up the pros and cons of it, you'd be able to look at it really balanced. Like if you have a balanced perspective, you basically see the upsides and downsides of everything. And if they're all balanced, what do we have? It just is. Yeah. But if you have one stacked up than the other, like really, really, really bad, what emotion do you have? It's really, really, really bad. But then if you have everything stacked up on one side saying it's really, really good, you have elation and falseness, right? So even with my father dying, it was like, what are some of the benefits of your father passing? Now, I'll tell you, I've doubled revenue since my dad died. Yeah. I've got a new accounting firm, legal firm. I'm more entrepreneurial. I've traveled. I've moved. I've become more independent. And I start to stack these up, Simon. And I look at this, and then all I have in the middle right now is gratitude for my dad. Not anger, resentment, frustration. I'm just like, he was a wonderful human being. I have no expectations that he was supposed to live for the rest of his life, for 920 years. The expectation was we die sometimes. He had a wonderful life. He's taught me a huge amount. I've gone on and been hugely successful, which he'll be hugely proud of. In the middle, all I have is this emotional feeling of gratitude, which means that I'm not painful or the other way. And I think that's something that we have to help a lot of people understand, that there is a middle ground, and it's okay with either side. But when they're out of balance, then we have a problem.
Yeah, that resonates with me so much. And I'll tell you two stories that came to my head from my past that came up. And the one was going back to that wake up weekend. And what they teach you is that you have everyone's brain has a process, and that process has been informed by some action that's happened in your life that's formed, like whether it's trauma or past experience, that will influence your process, and in turn that will influence your further actions to avoid or encourage that kind of process.
Yeah.
And the only way you change that is action. But obviously that's very difficult because you've been conditioned. And I remember one of the processes that I built up in my head coming back from the seminar was I was always really rubbish at talking to girls. And I always put them on a pedestal because the first person that I'd ever spoken to in that soul that I fancied laughed in my face. And I just built up this, that person won't like me, that person won't like me. And it was only when I heard somebody tell me, like, a girl can only be a 5 out of 10. She can't be a 10 out of 10. On looks alone, she was a 5. That changed my mind. So I need to go and see if she makes up the other 5 by being interesting, passionate, driven, ambitious. And it started to change my process. In the same way, it's like the way you perceive something. Should I have grief? Should I have loss? Should I have this? You're now going to reinforce that. So your actions are reinforced. And the second thing I remembered, similar thing, is when my granddad passed away. And we used to run 2 group classes at UP on a Saturday. And I got a missed call from 20 missed calls from my dad. And I'm very close to my dad, but we're not a calling all the time kind of person. Certainly not a 20 missed calls kind of person. So I rang him back in this 5 minutes of dream, and he was like, your granddad's passed away. And I sat there in the stairwell, and I was like, I've got 2 options. Either go home and I grieve, because that's what I would have done. But I've got clients waiting for me in this gym, and I have a responsibility. They don't know what's happened to me. It's my responsibility to make sure they have the class. I come back, I give the best class of my life. And I didn't grieve because I just went, cool, I've got a job to do. And it just kick-started me into the gears in motion. And it made me very similar to you. I started thinking, this doesn't have to be the way. My granddad was an incredible human being. But it's part of his what he has given me from running and businesses is that drive and that passion, that in turn probably maybe go back in there. So I think that's a very important message to share.
Huge. And I love what you've just said, and I just think to people, and this comes down to business, right? Because my primary role nowadays is teaching business. I teach KPIs and profit and loss and money and how to make money and how to run socials and all that stuff. But if you're genuinely the roadblock, I have an analogy of a coffee cup. And I always explain this to people. Your emotions, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about other people, how you feel about where you are in your life. Your emotions, you're either fulfilled, centered, happy and grateful, or you've got anger, resentment, frustration, fear, dread, pain. And all of those emotions, when you wake up in the morning, depending how many of them you have, fills your coffee cup up before you get out of bed. And if this is your coffee cup, okay, and you wake up in the morning and your coffee cup's that full of negative emotions that of pain, dread, anger, frustration, resentment, you name it. All of the emotion that you need to go about your day, drive, energy, enthusiasm, positivity, creativity, right? You have about that much to get through your day with. And then when you get to about 2:00, it all starts to boil over. And then we end up having overwhelm. We end up having burnt out. We end up having stress. We end up having arguments. And then we say, I haven't got enough time in the day to do all these things I need to do. Because you're starting the day absolutely screwed emotionally. Now, I wake up in the morning with emotion of gratitude, center, control, fulfillment. Don't get me wrong. I have problems. I have arguments. I have stressful situations. But I wake up very centered and controlled. And I have this huge amount of work to do in a day, a relationship to live, people to deal. I get it all done. I don't get overwhelmed, and I don't get emotional, and I don't get burnt out, because my life is full of eustress. not distress.
I love that.
I believe fully, as a human being, to have a fully enriched life, the practice of being centered, grounded, fulfilled, and grateful gives you so much energy to then focus on your lead gen, your marketing, your sales, and all this. People can't sell because they don't believe in themselves. People can't create content because they don't believe in themselves. People can't do the work because they're so bound up in how they feel about themselves. And it's the same with fat loss. People can't stick to a diet because of how they feel about themselves, and the story that they're telling each other. Because eating healthy and training is a piece of cake. So then we overcomplicate it with the science and the theory and the molecules and the chemicals and the chemistry and the biomechanics that's deeply, deeply complicated, which is rightly so. We want to study it. When it comes down to actually teaching somebody it, like all you do when you're a coach is repeat yourself. Unless you have a proven coaching program, we do. Simon, you know yourself, 99% of what we do as coaches is repeating the same thing every day. The only way in which we can help people to progress is if we undo the patterns that's stopping us have to repeat ourselves. And I stood on a treadmill. And one of the biggest reasons why I became a coach over a trainer, i.e., fascinated with the coaching process as opposed to just training somebody, is because I got bored of people not committing. And so one thing I'm obsessed with inside my business coaching program and my team is, and we have this with our personal training mentorship, we have this with our business coaching programs as well, is the facilitating of change as a human being. Because when we get that, develop high performance habits, you can't layer all these high performance habits on when somebody doesn't believe in themselves. They can only be built, you can only build excellence on top of excellent, like a baseline, right? If you've got a shitty cake and you put loads of stuff on it, it'll crumble down. So when you teach high performance, excellence and all this stuff, it's got to be built upon something that's already bloody good. And if you don't believe in yourself, you can't be a high performer, because high performers, have full belief certainty in themselves. Of course, we have self-doubt. That, in my opinion, self-doubt has to be there if you're challenging yourselves.
So what do you think? What do you think when it comes to zooming out one layer? Obviously, this has always been focused on improving the individual that's listening to this podcast. But most of these people are going to be coaches themselves, because we both mentor coaches. What can a coach do to help their clients not to commit more and adhere more to their programs? How do we help a third party do this? Because you got bored of people not wanting to commit. I've certainly been bored of people not wanting to commit. How do you begin to end that process and help people get consistent results with people?
I think the first thing to uncover with your clients is what they're able to commit to versus what we are telling them to do. I think change begins in small steps. And I think that most of us as coaches obsess over how much we're learning, that when we take a client on to give them the basics of stop having 6 cans of Coke and have 3. It's such a basic piece of advice, but I think that step number 1 as a coach is get yourself right first, because I don't think that you will ever be able to coach people properly if you're not speaking from an experienced tongue. And in that short period of time as a coach, Simon, you have to understand over the first 2 to 3 years of your career, you're going to work with a lot of non-compliant clients, because until you are fully compliant, and until, I think that coaches need to turn themselves into somebody who's incredibly inspiring, get in great shape, go through the process yourself, study relentlessly, work on your own standards and systems, work on your own personal development. Because I truly do believe, when people work with me, they do what I say, right? Because they make a solid commitment. I think through my marketing, I talk so much about stuff that people have got an opinion, an ability to change, and it buffers people away from working with me who aren't ready to change. And I was a big fan of that. As I started changing my marketing, I talked about who I wanted to work with and what I think people need to be. But I think in terms of actually going into work with people, if you don't have the skills of personal development, then you're certainly not going to be able to help a client. But I think that really minimizing or pulling back on how complex inexperienced coaches make the coaching process makes it so much easier for somebody to actually follow. Because I don't think that change happens within a 12-week transformation. And I certainly do believe that if a coach is not addressing how the person perceives themselves, it's not coaching. Because the reason why people say, oh, you shouldn't do 12-week transformations, they fuck people up. Yeah, they do fuck people up if you just give them the transformation. Right? Yes, they do fuck people up because you don't, like, if I say to somebody, let's do a 12-week sprint in your business to get you from 5K to 15K or 5K to 10K. Now, all throughout that process, I'm conditioning how they're going to behave after it. Right? So for me, if I'm going to do a 12-week transformation to somebody to get them in the best shape of their life, I've got to do the conditioning post. Right? Because yes, we want the transformation, but I think that we've also got to understand that whenever we're coaching somebody, we're dealing with a human being. And I think that we have to encourage our clients to change who they are. And I think that's a long drawn out process. That's 6 to 12 months, more, 18 months. And I think that change doesn't happen overnight. And as a coach, I think that the greatest thing you can do, without telling you exactly what to do with your clients, the greatest thing you can do is be curious in yourself and start to uncover the challenges that you're in right now. Because when you do start to study that stuff, it's like, what's your advice to a coach that's really struggling with clients that understand biomechanics? I'm like, study biomechanics.
Yeah.
Because then you have a step-by-step process of how you would actually help somebody to understand that biomechanics is not about teaching the resultant or the lines of force of an exercise to a client. It's about simplifying it in human language.
Yes.
And I think that if you are somebody that says, I help my clients with mindset, but you're just as fucked as your clients, then no, you don't.
Yes.
I do not think that we need a degree in this industry at all to help people understand their behavior. I don't think we do. I don't think we need a degree. I think that as humans, our behavior is something that we learn as we go through life. And I think when we talk to people and help them with some very basic habits, I'm not trying to influence your psychology to a point of dealing with people with clinical psychological problems. Because think of it like this, Simon, right? If two women have a coffee and a girl's going through shit with a partner and the other girl says, do you know what I think you should do with him? And the reason she says that is because she's been through two failed relationships and her perspective on relationships has changed. And if the perspective she gives a friend on her relationship means that the partner and her work it out or they split up, but it was a perspective from an experienced Tom, then she's actually done some personal development with them. So I think that when we go through our journey ourselves, we need to be, Ben Pakulski always said this to me, we need to be 10 steps ahead of our clients to be a great coach. Yeah. And I think most coaches are one step, if that, ahead. Yeah. And that's half the reason why they can't teach.
I also think there's an element here that you mentioned about you've got to help them get their own personal development. You've got to help them get through their barriers. And I think one of the biggest lessons I was always taught was, if this was a Harry Potter book, I am Dumbledore, I am not Harry. Your client is Harry in this scenario. And the more you can speak to them about where their journey is, and your job's there to be a guide, it allows them to find their own journey. It allows them to set their own expectations. And it allows the coach to be a little bit, not stand back, but just because, right, cool, I'll help you with whatever you do. Because coaches put a lot of pressure on themselves to get results and also can be a bit overbearing because of it at times.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a coach can be very overbearing, and I think a coach is so desperate to get the result they forget that. And this is important. The result's important, but your client's going to dig their heels in if they're not ready. And I think that we can be so obsessive about the result, you drive people away. For example, you say, right, let's push on, let's stick to the diet for the next 7 day, 2 weeks, and let's see how we get on. And the guy's like, I've got 2 big deals coming up. I've got 2 girls that have got nativity plays over Christmas. Like, I think I'm going to give it a break because you are pushing for the result too hard, right? And you're not respectful of the client where they are right now. Like, I will say this to every coach listening. You earn the type of clients that I've worked with over the years. You earn them. Like, I got to a point where 100% of my client portfolio was body transformations or bodybuilding. And they were giving me 110%, but it took me 10 years to deserve that. Yeah. So I think that as a coach right now, firstly, expect people to not follow the plan and expect people to not get great results until you've studied enough that give you the skills to be able to do that. Like right now, I can take somebody who is really non-compliant and help them become compliant. But when you're new to the industry, you can't expect to take somebody who's non-compliant and make them compliant because you're too wet behind the ears and you've not studied how to get somebody compliant. So, learn this stuff. Get in there. Go on the courses like you've talked about, Simon, and actually put yourself in the thick of it and learn. Because when you do, like you're gonna every single person listening to this episode right now has the opportunity to be an absolute world-class coach. I mean, world-class. Make world-class money, get world-class transformations, do whatever they want in their world, but most people don't do it because they just don't give themselves permission to be more. And I'm so grateful that I've spent 5 to 6 years uncovering and remodeling and remolding myself to be the person I am today. And I don't think people are brave enough to take the time to look inside Pandora's box. And I think if they did, they'd be a damn sight further than they are right now. Because people want everything tomorrow. They're not prepared to take 5 years to get to where they want to be. But an Olympic athlete's quite happy to do 4 years of training for one Olympics.
Yes. Yeah. So to have a couple of closing questions, because I know I
Please,
don't want to take
please.
up the rest of your day. Customer service is a big thing. And I read the forward of your book, and I remember reading it and thinking, who is this person that's giving Mark such good praise? And it was like from the handshake to the smile to the tonality. And I got to the end and I realized it was Ben Bukulski of all people.
Yeah.
And I thought there is it's incredible that someone that is so generally well-renowned and impressive feels this way of you. And it's an ethos you give off across all of your businesses. What do you think it takes to have good enough, customer service in everything that you do, that you are known for looking after your clients, getting referrals, making compliant people non-compliant compliant? What is the underpinning of that, do you think, for you? Other than knowing yourself, which is we've obviously very much covered.
Consistency.
Interesting. In everything that you do? Yeah.
And also, it was really interesting. By the way, I really struggle on podcasts. I say I really struggle. I mean, reword that. I sometimes don't like podcasts to always be about how things are great right now, because I think our greatest lessons is actually from when things are really shit. I've been a bad manager. I've had a brand that was not where it wanted to be for quite a long time. I always say when you interview people that have achieved great success, let them tell you about where it wasn't successful. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're looking at my standards and my service and systems and everything, but I've not got it all right, Simon. And it's just been a constant desire. I've just wanted to be, firstly, I've wanted to have a great reputation for high standards and service and quality results. Within the business, the guys know. I even, I speak to my team very regularly about standards, customer service. I remember watching a TV documentary about the Claridges in central London, and they have a meeting every morning and they review the standards, and they have butler training and all this stuff. And I very regularly run into challenges with my team when they're not adhering to our brand standards, brand guidelines, etc. And there have to be a non-negotiable. I mean, look, you've worked with UP. Nick has got incredibly high standards.
Yes, indeed.
And, he has many coaches that will say sometimes maybe a little bit too much. Go and work somewhere else. Yeah. And this is a big thing for me. It's like, if you work in my gym, I promise you'll become extremely good. I will help you present your brand by sharing more about you. But while you're in it, you'll not only learn a hell of a lot and become a great coach, but I expect you to live by my standards. And one of the things that I find fascinating is very, very few businesses, Simon, by the way, we have a set code of conduct. We have a set code of best practice for every business I've got. And they are agreeable, not just by me, by the team. And Clive Woodward said when he won the World Cup with England, so Clive Woodward, he created something called teamship. Now, I learned about this after I was developing this, but he said, the best thing about teamship is that you as the leader do not create the standards, the team create the standards, because the best way to have standards within an organization is if they're actually agreed to by the team, by everyone. And one thing that I love is the fact that, I generally, with Ben Bukulski years ago when he was getting ready for the Arnolds, I had a mindset month where I just literally left England and had a month in Florida and trained with Ben every day. And I terrified when I came back how the gym would look. But we've had the gym 10 years. If you go in there today, it's pristine. And I'm so grateful to the fact that we've been able to maintain that for 10 years, Simon. 5 years with the other gym. And so how have you done it? And I genuinely, it's keeping an eye on standards, and it's making sure that people buy into them, and it's making sure that they're not told about them. It's making sure that we all agree on them. And I've not got it right. It's also being very aware of the brand that we want to, I spoke to my personal development coach recently, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a business coach that wants to be known as a 7-figure Sam. And in my opinion, the 7-figure Sams are the guys that say, you want to make 7 figures? This is what you got to do. Like, making 7 figures is the combination of a huge amount of things. And at the end of the day, it's not just about the money that you make. It's about, money. Making huge amounts of money is great. But there's so many people I know that have made loads of money and are fucking unhappy. And so what else is it all about? And I think for me, my mission here is to help people realize that to create a truly fulfilling business, to create a fulfilling life, and to have wealth, and to have great relationships, and have an empowered, knowledgeable mind, and feel like you're waking up every morning with a vision and a mission that literally puts the hairs on the back of your neck up in the air. Takes a lot of work. And because I'm very, very clear with who I am and what I want to present to the world, I think that as a leader is important, and also finally, I lead from the front. That's a big thing for me. I believe that I should stay in shape. I believe I should stay sharp. I believe that I should always do what I'm expecting other people to do. My father always said, go and read the meters at the properties that we manage. And I was like, what? And he went, always do what you are prepared of your team to do. What you expect of your team. So I think for me is lead from the front. Don't expect to do things that you wouldn't do. Get other people to do things you wouldn't do yourself. I keep studying, stay sharp, and keep learning, because I think for me, if I do all those things and I'm looking at all the different areas of my life, that's the thing that I would rather people know me for, as opposed to diverting. And I think people get shiny object syndromes when they have a business, and they divert too quickly away from something just in the chase of money. But I have such a powerful North Star, it keeps me aligned and doesn't allow me to pull off in different directions. And I think that's what dilutes a lot of businesses, is that, I want to make a load of money, let's start this. And then you realize that the thing you spent 10 years building has just slid away. And they're just some really important things to me.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. And I can see this when you talk about Clive Woodburn teamship, and that's something I've looked at a lot, being a huge rugby fan like you. But I see that with you, that the team is as important to you as you are to you. And I've known a lot of coaches that work for you now and have worked for you in the past and have gone on to successful things. And it's the element of I don't know if it's because of your business coaching ethos and how you want to help and mentor people, you've looked after them. So in turn, people want to look after you in return. And that's something that I don't think every leader has.
I do, honestly. It really matters to me what people think. People that work for me in my organization, it matters to me. I don't get it right all the time, Christ, at all, Simon. I don't get it right all the time. But it matters to me that they're happy. It matters to me that they enjoy the business. It matters to me that they enjoy the brand. I listened to this, by the way. I listened to an interview on the Diary of a CEO, and they interviewed the owner of Timpson's, the shoe repairers. And they said in there, which has resonated with me over the years, because do you know what I love, Simon? I just love really nice people. I love really nice people. And how do I categorize a nice person? I don't even say strong values, because there's so many different values on it. Just somebody that's not got an elevated ego, somebody that's a great conversationalist. There's so much that I value in somebody that's kind of like, and I would probably put more thought to it when I sum up a nice person. But Timpsons, they said this. They said, I understood that you don't interview people. You don't ask for a CV. And they said, no, we don't ask for a CV, because we want to hire great people, but we can teach the skill. And the interesting thing is, so Dave Brailsford, I used to coach him. Right. And Dave said to me once, I said, Dave, what's your key behind interviewing? And I've heard this from two greats, owner of Timpson's and sort of Dave Brailsford. And I said, what's your tip for interviewing people? And he just said, hire a great person who can teach the skill. And I think one of the things I always want in my business is great people. And the one thing I find in a lot of businesses is they go and hire the great skill, which is great, but it doesn't complement the teamship, the team unity. And I think that the skill is very, very important, but I also want to find the skill with the great person. And that means that they're pretty unique individuals. And I'm very, very proud to say that we've got some brilliant people in the company. And that matters to me. That matters to me a lot. So nice people.
I totally agree with you with that. And this is part of the reason why I started this podcast and why I'm so passionate about it, is I get to speak to people that I tend to find that the people that resonate with me online and the people I want to talk to are generally those kind of people. I haven't asked someone with an inflated ego on the show. And I think because of that, I've always managed to have good conversations up to this point. So my last question for you before we find out where things are, where people can find you. You mentioned there about all the things that make good customer service. Yet someone on this, if they're wanting to get coached, and obviously we can say they should go to M10 or get business coaching from you, but there is a lot of seven-figure Sams out there. There's a lot of bad personal trainers out there. How does someone know? I have certainly invested in people where the customer service behind the paywall wasn't what it looked like on the front face value.
Yep.
How can people spot somebody that's actually good before they put their hard-earned money down?
How can a client spot a good coach?
Spot a good coach, or a coach spot a good business mentor? How can he spot if their words that they're portraying on social media, because everyone has a good Instagram account these days, how can he say there is actual something behind, there's weight behind their words?
I think first things first, message the testimonials. Second thing is go to the case history. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've been reviewing some mission statements for us at the moment, and whilst we help people achieve a certain amount of revenue and build a business and a brand, the one thing that we are also helping coaches make sure we build is 5-star service and systems. So the one thing I would do is do your research on the coach and see what they're known for helping people with. And if you want to build a business with heart and passion and I call it a beating heart, like something. To me, I think there's a lot of people go out there to build businesses very, very quick. So if the ethos of the person is we help coaches get to 10K in 90 days, to me, you can't do that with a brand. Yeah. Right? So if you're going for a business coach that literally says in 90 days we'll get you to this, they will literally hammer you with sales tactics to make that amount of money. But you've got to say to yourself, what type of business do I want to build? Now, I help people make a lot of money in a short pace of time. But the one thing that differentiates me, and if you actually look at me, I've done over 15, well, I've been in the industry 23 years, but I built a business, a gym my gym's been going for 15 years, one of them to 10. So I've lasted the course. My reputation's intact. I make a lot of money, and I get a lot of testimonials, a lot of transformations. And we have about an 87% retention rate on all of our clients inside our coaching programs. And if you did your research on me and actually asked some people, you'd see that we care. We make sure that when we do our one-to-one mentoring, I'd say our one-to-one calls and mentoring inside our group coaching programs, that my performance coaches don't mentor more than 35 people each. And what you got to look at is, does a program have the things that you're looking for? Are you just looking to make 10K in 90 days? Are you actually being smart enough to realize that you're trying to build a business? For me, I think the one thing I'll tell you about me and separating everybody else is that I build brands. I don't just make people wealthy.
Love that. So for people,
that's one of my biggest things is a brand with a beating heart. A brand with a beating heart for me. And I'll the money side of it's important, but I want coaches to be here in 10 years' time like me.
Yeah, I love that, because so many people bow out of the industry far too soon. And we said at the start about the desire to be liked, and the you wanting people to respect you and what you do. I went on to this show saying at the start that I've respected what you do and what you've accomplished for the entirety of my career.
Thank you.
I've left in more respect for you for what you've given me today. So this has been a great show. Thank you so much. So for people who want to find out more about your business coaching program and find out more about M10, where can people find more about you if you don't know already?
Firstly, go to my Instagram, Mark Coles.Many. You can go to m10life.com and you'll see all our coaching programs. You'll learn a lot about me there. Everything through my Instagram is directed to my YouTube, my Facebook fan pages, etc. But if you go for Mark Coles.Many on Instagram, you'll be directed to everything through there.
I will wholeheartedly give, and I don't do this for every guest, vouch for most of the content you've put on there. I've generally enjoyed watching some of your old M10 YouTube videos in preparation for this interview that really have helped me. And I said, if you're a coach out there and maybe can't afford the top end product, right now, go and buy the 8-week physique. Go and buy the blueprint. The blueprint in particular really transformed the way I think about my work. So I want to thank you massively.
Thank you, Simon.
Coaching.
Very grateful for your time.
Thank you. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching the podcast. If you're like me and like to binge watch podcast episodes, click here for our most recent episode. And if you enjoy the show and want to be updated when new videos come live, click here to subscribe to the channel.